Hello everyone. I hope all of you have been taking good care of yourself and have been doing fine. So today I bring to you a video on how to draft terms of use for a website. Now you would find terms and conditions documents on various websites, and most people also copy paste these terms and conditions for their own websites. But the truth is that there are certain customizations which are required, and one size fits all does not work when it comes to terms of use. So let us move on and see what are the various things you need to keep in mind before you sit down to draft terms of use for a website. Now, before you sit down and draft the terms and conditions document, the most critical thing is to understand the business. Now, what are the services being offered? So before you sit down and draft a terms and conditions document, you need to understand what are you drafting? What is the thing that these terms and conditions are going to regulate? So for example, if there is a platform on which various professionals come together and they interact with each other, now that would be very different from, for example, say an application which is being licensed out to various businesses for use, or maybe a website where you are just visiting and you are doing something and you're not posting any content on the same. So therefore, each service, each product is different. So before you sit down to draft the terms and conditions, you need to understand what are the services being offered by that particular website or that particular application. And only in that context would you be able to draft the terms of use properly. Now, there are certain operational things of every website. So for example, is the creation of an account required? Now, many websites allow users to access their services or their products only after they have created an account with them, or maybe they have subscribed to their services, or they have given their email addresses, or they have registered within the website. So these operational details need to be taken into account. So for instance, if creation of an account is required, now the terms and conditions would also include, terms which would govern the collection and usage of personal information. It would also govern the fact that, someone else doesn't have an unauthorized access to such an account, or the user of the account does not share his password outside. So these are certain things which then also come into picture. So therefore, you need to understand how the services work before you draft terms and conditions for the website. Now, is a fee being charged or is it free of cost? So again, for example, if the service is subscription based and you are paying, for example, 1,000 rupees in an year for that particular service. Now the terms and conditions would be dependent upon this. So if you're paying something, then obviously there would be something, which would enable you to get the money refunded. There would also be payment terms and conditions. There would be a payment gateway which would be there. So all these things come into picture if the service is a paid one. Similarly, if the service is a subscription-based service, there would be things such as cancellation of subscription. How can I cancel my subscription? When can I cancel my subscription? What do I get back when I cancel my subscription? So these things would also be included in the terms and conditions document. Now, who is the target consumer? So again, whether the end user would be the public at large or whether the end user would be another business is also something which needs to be taken into account. So if it's another business, then in that case, the terms and conditions would be slightly different. If it's an end user, then again, the terms and conditions may be different. So you need to figure out these operational, things before you sit down and draft terms and conditions for a website. Now, description of services. So now again, when you start drafting a terms and conditions document, now what is important is that you need to give a brief description of the services, because what does the terms and conditions document do? It basically tells the users who come to your website that, okay, you are going to be governed under these rules. So therefore the person should know that what are the services he's saying okay to. Now, who are the services being, who the services are being offered to? So again, you need to make sure that who is your intended, target audience there. Now, you should also mention how can one avail of these services. So for example, if someone visits a website, doesn't really do anything and then moves on to another website. Now that person would think, okay, I am not governed by the terms and conditions because I did not do anything when I visited the website. But a lot of terms and conditions also have this, that only by merely visiting the website, you consent to be subject to the terms, to these terms and conditions. So therefore, the end user should know that whether he is subject to these terms and conditions merely by visiting the website, or he needs to use any of the services for the terms and conditions to apply to him. Now, eligibility to use the website. So again, the eligibility to use the website would typically is above 18 years of age. So, but if you have a website which is targeted towards minors, then in that case, you need to be very careful about how you draft your terms and conditions, because then you need to make sure that no information which is harmful or offensive to the minors is included. There is no breach of any applicable law. Any third party advertising on your website also makes sure of that. So there are a lot of compliances which come into play if your website is targeted towards minors. So therefore, typically terms and conditions include this eligibility criteria that a user has to be above 18 years of age. Now again, how do you differentiate? Because it's an online website, right? So a lot of people may visit your website and they may be below 18 years of age. So you still include all the information which you would have included if the website targets minors. But at the same time, you should also make sure that the person visiting is consenting to the fact that yes, I am 18 years of age and above, and I am authorized to use this website. So therefore, these are the things you should keep in mind when you start drafting your terms and conditions document. Now, restrictions in usage. So you need to basically lay out what are the permissible uses and what are the non-permissible uses. Now, if you are an intermediary, then typically the law mandates you to lay down certain restrictions, such as any information which is posted should not violate any third party's intellectual property, or any information which is posted should not be harmful, offensive, should not, adversely affect minors in any way. So these are certain things which you need to include in your terms of use if you are an intermediary or a platform. Now, what are the permissible uses in the context of the service? So one is the legal, the law mandates you to include these particular restrictions. Now, second is that what are the restrictions on the usage in context of the service? So for example, if your website allows people to post content, now the authenticity of that consent, the fact that that consent doesn't, is not, doesn't harm anyone, is not offensive to anyone, that content is not plagiarized from anywhere else. So all those things you need to put in. Now, for example, if your website is giving medical services to people, so people who are advertising through your platform are genuine or not, whether users, if they are accessing those people's phone numbers, now can they contact them or not? So all those things need to be governed through the terms and conditions document, and these permissible uses would depend upon the context of the service being offered. So therefore, you need to understand what services are being offered by the website before you sit down to draft the terms and conditions. Now, if the content is being shared, then you need to build protection around the content. So you need to make sure that the content being shared doesn't offend anyone, is not harmful, is not plagiarized. So you need to have a bunch of protections built around the content. So that is also something which depends upon the context of service. Similarly, you need to protect against IP infringement. So for example, if someone visits your website, now they try to copy your logo and create something else, maybe with a similar sounding name, and hence causes confusion among consumers. Now, things like this should be protected against, and things like this should be included in your terms and conditions document as well. Now, compliance with law. So again, your terms and conditions should always include a provision which says that the users should only use the website in compliance with the applicable law. So this in a way, reduces your liability because you have said that users should use the website in compliance with applicable law. Now, if someone is using your website for unlawful or illegal purposes, then you can always show the terms and conditions document and you can say that my rules say that you have to use it in compliance with applicable law. And if you are not doing so, then it's your liability. And I would not be liable for the same. Now, again, there's this phrase called from time to time. Now, you need to include that whenever you are saying that the users should at all times be in compliance with applicable law. So again, because the applicable law today could be something else. The applicable law 4 years from now could maybe it gets changed and maybe there's something else. So you need to include this that, the applicable law for the time being in force or the applicable law as changed from time to time. Now, if content is being shared, then you need to build protection around the content. So, and also you need to give protection against IP infringement. So, therefore, you need to make sure that the content being shared is also in compliance with the law and there is no illegal content being shared. So, for example, if you have, a social media website or a website where people come together and they interact. Now, what if two people are conspiring using the chatting features of that particular website, to commit some unlawful or illegal act? So therefore, these kinds of protection need to be built in the website and in the terms of conditions document. Now, payment details. So again, if your website is on a subscription basis, if you are collecting payments from the users, then in that case, you need to clearly lay down what is the payment, what is the model, whether it's a one-time fee, whether it's a monthly subscription fee that I have to pay, whether I need to pay in advance or whether I would be paying in arrears. So all these operational details need to be captured in the terms and conditions document. Now you also need to have a refund policy. So you can either have a separate refund policy or you can build this in the terms of use itself. Now, again, how can someone initiate the refund? Within what time period would the refund happen? In what account would the refund go? Can I claim credit against the refund? All those things you need to mention when you are drafting a refund term or a refund policy. Now, again, if there are changes in prices, would the users be intimated or they need to update themselves? If there is a change in the terms and conditions themselves, then whether the users need to be intimated or they need to keep visiting the site and they need to keep going through the terms and conditions to understand the changes and the updates. All these things also need to be mentioned in the terms of use document. Now, intellectual property, you need to clearly mention who owns the website. So therefore, there is no confusion later on. Now, you also need to mention restrictions that so no one, visits your website and then maybe accesses your code, modifies it, or maybe, copies content from your website or duplicates your logos or trademarks. So you need to have such kind of restrictions built in the terms of use so as to prevent other people from coming and maybe, violating your intellectual property. Now, also, apart from the website, its code, the content posted, which may be your own intellectual property, there could also be a third-party intellectual property if your website allows posting of content. So, for example, if it's a website where people are posting their articles or blog posts. Now, in such cases, maybe a third party comes and they copy paste one of the blog posts from your website and they pass it off as their own. Now, this blog would not be your own intellectual property, but would be the intellectual property of the author. So then the author can bring a claim against you. So you need to be protected against this as well. So therefore, you need to have these protections also built in that if any third party members are posting content, then their content should not be, plagiarized, copied, modified, or their intellectual property should not be infringed by any of the users who are using the particular website. So therefore, you need to be very careful regarding protection of intellectual property. you need to think in the context of the services being offered. So therefore, always think, what are the services being offered? What are the operational specifics of this particular website? So what can a person do? The best way, I would say, before you sit down to draft a terms and conditions document, always go to that particular website or application for which you are drafting this. Go and use it and then understand how it's done. And that will make you realize what are the specific terms and conditions relevant to the services being offered or the product being offered that I need to include in my terms and conditions document. Now, personal information, typically personal information is governed under privacy policy, but you should also mention in your terms of use that personal information shall be collected in accordance with the applicable law, and you should always take the consent of the person before collecting their personal information. Sometimes people collect phone numbers or email addresses also to send promotional or advertisement emails. Now, for that also, you need to build in a term in your terms of use saying that the user consents to receiving such communication, and he or she can at any point of time withdraw this consent. So, and then you should also provide a procedure through which the person can withdraw their consent. Now, you should also mention that the personal information being collected would be used only for the purposes of giving them services or for the improvement of the services, etc., but nothing beyond the same. So that is something which you need to mention in your terms of use. Also, you should have a separate privacy policy to govern the usage of personal information. You should also have contact details of any grievance officer mentioned in your terms of use. So in case if any member is not comfortable sharing their personal information and they want to withdraw their consent, or they have any issues regarding the same, they can actually contact that particular grievance officer, and you should have the contact details of the grievance officer clearly displayed in your terms of use. So I hope this was helpful to you. And if you have any questions regarding this, you can always send me a message on LinkedIn or you can comment below. Thank you and have a nice day. Looking forward to posting more videos on topics of interest. Thank you. Have a nice day.